Now that we have some data in our table, we can begin querying that data. So if you look, we're already here on the SQL tab after inserting the data here. So even though we're in the SQL tab, let's go ahead and click that again to clear everything out. So our first mission is to just display the people that have a shoe size bigger than 8, and we only want to show the name and the shoe size columns. And if you're up for a challenge, go ahead and pause the video now and see if you can get a query working that does that. But I'm going to go ahead and type out the query now. I'm going to zoom in so we can see this text a little bit easier. And here's what it says. We're going to select. Now again, this is the select keyword that indicates that we're pulling out records from the database rather than doing something like inserting or deleting. And next, instead of using an asterisk, which we used in our previous select queries, we're going to specify the specific columns that we want to return in the output. In this case, we want to show just the name and the shoe size. And the way we do that is by entering the column names separated by a comma. Now we have an extra space after this comma, but that's not necessary. It's just a way to make it a little bit easier to read this query. We don't want to add a comma to the end of this list. So we have just one comma separating name and shoe size. And then we have another keyword from, which indicates we're about to tell the query what table we want to pull this data from. We're going to select people, and then we're going to specify our conditions with this where keyword. And then we use just a simple comparison operator here, a greater than operator, to say that the shoe size, and this is the name of the column, is bigger than 8. So you can consider this shoe size kind of a placeholder. This query will go through each row in the table, and it will take this shoe size number and compare it to 8. And this will be true for anything above 8. So we've already used logic like this in PHP in some of the previous examples. So the idea of an operator and a condition should be pretty familiar. Now, if you're writing this from scratch, it can be a little tough going back to the Structure tab in order to see what all the column names are. So over here on the right, there's a list of them. And if you click one of them, I'm going to go ahead and do that, you can click this arrow button in order to pull it over into the query, along with quotes. Now again, we don't need quotes around column names, but they don't hurt either. I'm going to go ahead and remove this for now. And let's go ahead and submit this and see what it returns. Okay. At the top, we have a confirmation message that says we're showing rows 0 through 1 for 2 total rows. And we can see our data down here. We have the name and the shoe size columns, and we have George and Deepak both returned, who both have shoe sizes bigger than 8. So our query worked. Now let's do one more query on this table through PHPMyAdmin that's just a little bit more complicated. And this time, instead of clicking the SQL tab in the right-hand pane here, let's click the SQL icon in the top left. And this will open a query window. So we can easily browse the data or the structure in the other browser window and start to build our query here without worrying about accidentally losing our work by navigating to another page. This time we're going to change up our query a bit. What we want is to find any people that have the shoe size bigger than 8, but that also have an EE in their name somewhere. That's 2 E's together. And this time, let's show all of the columns instead of just the 2 that we got from the last query. Again, if you're following along and you want to take this as a challenge, go ahead and pause. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward here and type out the query. I'll zoom in a bit to increase the font size. And so what we have here is we're going to select all of the columns, which we're going to specify with an asterisk, from the people table, where shoe size is bigger than 8. Now, up to this point, this has been the same pretty much as our previous query, but in order to use 2 different conditions, we'll string them together with an AND keyword. In this case, we want to check the shoe size, but we also want to make sure that there's an EE in the name somewhere. So the second condition says name is like, and then it has EE surrounded by wildcards, which are percentage signs, and then this is in quotes. Now we looked at a like condition before. The difference between this example and our previous one is that now we're using a wildcard on both sides. So what this says is that this EE can be anywhere inside of the name. It can be at the very beginning, at the very end, or sandwiched in between other letters. By saying AND, what we say is that any rows that we return have to match both this condition and this condition. So they'll have EE in their name, and they'll have a shoe size bigger than 8. If we look at our data, I'm going to zoom out and go back to the other window here. and I'm going to click Browse so we see all of our rows. The only entry that this should return is Deepak. He has an EE in his name, and his shoe size is 10, which is bigger than 8. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to go back to the other window here, and I'm going to click Go in order to submit the query. Notice that this keeps the query window open so we can continue working with our query. And to see the return values, we have to click on the background window. So we have a successful query. We have a confirmation message up here, and then here's our result, which is Deepak, and it returns all of the columns, which was exactly what we were looking for.